congregant of mine from my previous church dropped off his wife and their grandkids in front of their building in the Bronx. As they were getting out of the car, he was heading out to find parking, and he said, "Take care of the kids and go about your business." Moments later, he died of a massive heart attack. Death is often, even usually, unexpected, which has almost nothing to do with the circumstances. Death alters life for our beloved, shaking the ground and forcing a recalibration. I've seen people sitting by a deathbed for months and still report how sudden a death was. I can't help but wonder today what life would look like if we thought there was only a little bit of time left. I don't mean a week, I mean like a year. What would change if we thought we had just a little bit of time? How would we spend just the last year? And I don't know for sure, but I think that I would live in a bigger, bolder way. I wouldn't be afraid to speak truth. I'd take more risks. I'd care less about what people think. I'd be sure to capture moments, to smell the air, to feel my son's soft hair, to enjoy the way my dogs jump on top of each other every time I try and put leashes on them, instead of getting annoyed that they're just wasting my precious time. This sermon, the title of this sermon, comes from something that was written in 1979 by Irma Bombeck. She'd been diagnosed with cancer, and she was thinking about her life and the things she'd like to do over. And her reflection wasn't about major regrets or massive transformations. It's just this really simple observation that she had been too concerned with small things, which meant she'd missed out on the joy that was being offered to her so often in her regular, average, everyday life. And I thought, the Sunday after Easter is a good time to just think about what's simple. What are the simple things that we can just enjoy? What are the ways that we can live bigger, live more boldly, think wider about our own lives? For me, the Sunday after Easter is when I need something sort of easy to digest. And so here is Irma Bombeck's reflection. She writes, if I had my life to live over, I would have gone to bed when I was sick instead of pretending the earth would go on a holding pattern if I weren't there for the day. I would have burned the pink candle sculpted like a rose before it melted in storage. I would have talked less and listened more. I would have invited friends over to dinner, even if the carpet was stained or the sofa faded. I would have eaten popcorn in the good living room and worried less about dirt when someone wanted to light a fire in the fireplace. I would have taken the time to listen to my grandfather ramble about his youth. I would have shared more of the responsibility carried by my husband. I would never have insisted the car windows be rolled up on a summer day because I just had my hair teased and sprayed. I would have sat on the lawn, even with the grass stains. I would have cried and laughed less while watching television and more while watching Life. I would have bought anything. I would never have bought anything just because it was practical, wouldn't soil, or was guaranteed to last a lifetime. Instead of wishing away 9 months of pregnancy, I'd have cherished every moment and realized the wonderment growing inside me was the only chance in life to assist God in a miracle. When my kids kissed me impetuously, I would never have said, "Later, now go get washed up for dinner." There would have been more "I love yous," more "I'm sorries." But mostly, given another shot at life, I would seize every minute, look at it and really see it, live it, and never give it back. So what stops us from living our best lives, from being awake to the wonder of being alive, of grabbing onto life with every ounce of our beings? things? And are you living the life that you want to live? If today were your last day, would you be satisfied with who you've been and what you've done? Do you feel clear about what and who you love? And have you lived as if that was true? Annie Dillard, the American transcendentalist writer, has several passages about weasels in her books. And I'm fascinated, not because I'm really all that interested in weasels, but because in her writing, she sort of draws this picture of an animal modeled on raw enthusiasm, which we don't see very often in the human world. According to Dillard, the weasel lives by instinct, pointed and focused. A naturalist was once bitten by a weasel who couldn't get him off the palm of his hand. And no matter what he did, he couldn't get him off. And so the naturalist walked for a half a mile with the weasel hanging from his hand until he could find some water in which he soaked the weasel like a stubborn label till the weasel finally let go for fear of drowning. I wonder what it would feel like to live with that much focus. To grab onto the palm of a hand, to be carried through the woods, letting my body get drenched before letting go. I want to live that boldly. I want to live fully, passionately, with all of my energy. I want to care deeply about things, events, people, planet. The other day, someone I know texted me. She was looking to join friends. They were sitting Shiva. She was trying to find the apartment. So she's like, is it, on this? Do I turn over here? She's walking the street. She's freezing. She's wet. It was soaking wet. And I thought, we should all let ourselves get that cold, searching for a grieving widow. We should all give up an afternoon to be present to someone who's raw, open, and vulnerable in that grieving moment of their lives. I want to be part of a community of people sacrificing comfort for that kind of love. American author and fellow Unitarian Henry David Thoreau wrote of his now famous life experiment of letting go of the civilized world. The Bostonian society in which he was living was the Unitarian minister, William Ellery Channing, who, sensing Thoreau's need for focus, urged him to go out, build yourself a hut, and there begin the grand process of devouring yourself alive. So Thoreau borrowed a cabin from Ralph Waldo Emerson, and during his 2 years there, he wrote the essay, Walden, in which he tells us, and I know I quote this a lot, but I find it revealing. He says, I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essentials of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not when I came to die, discover I had not lived. I did not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear. Nor did I wish to practice resignation unless it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck all the marrow out of life, to live so sturdily and Spartan-like as to put to rout all that was not life and cut a broad swath and shave close, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms. But Thoreau didn't stay at Walden for more than 2 years. He wrote, I left the woods for as good a reason as I went there. Perhaps it seemed to me that I had several more lives to live and could not spare any more time for that one. It is remarkable how easily and insensibly we fall into a particular route and make a beaten track for ourselves. I had not lived there a week before my feet wore a path from my door to the pond. The surface of the earth is soft and impressible by the feet of men, and so with the paths which the mind travels. How worn and dusty, then, must be the highways of the world, how deep the ruts of tradition and conformity. Thoreau was no escapist or navel gazer. He lives many lives after Walden. He became an ardent abolitionist, speaking and working against slavery. He also published the essay on the duty of civil disobedience, which went on to inspire Gandhi and our own Reverend John Haynes Holmes, later Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and all of their work for human rights. He had other things to do and more lives to live, and he got on with it. So what about us? It's all too easy to follow along in the path that others have traveled before us or laid out for us, or the paths that we ourselves have worn day after day. Every now and then it's good to look up and look around and ask, am I living a life that is my own? Are there changes I want to make? Are there other lives I'm being called to explore? The question isn't, should we live like the weasel, grabbing onto a single necessity, sinking our teeth into the throat of life? The question is, how do we do that when we also have to file our taxes? How do we live a life awake when there are so many details that can easily lull us back to sleep? How do we make the choice to venture in the cold to visit a grieving friend when we could far more easily stay home and keep warm? And how do we know when we're just walking the same paths over and over again, treading the same ground rather than seeking new roads? So if we took today as an opportunity to consider our choices, to pay attention for a moment to the lives we're living, are we fulfilling our desires? Are we going to find ourselves at the end of our lives wishing we'd done it differently? Last summer, my family and I went to Greece. Going to Greece has been a dream of mine. I'd look at pictures of the Aegean Sea and I would long to be there. But it's expensive and I don't speak Greek and I don't have that kind of time. So year after year, I don't go to Greece. Even though these friends of ours live in Greece part of the year. And they always tell me the invitation's wide open. So last spring, I told my husband, I want to go. I really thought it was going to take a lot of convincing given the cost in time and money. My husband is very practical. So I started with my arguments. Our son is in 8th grade. In 5 years, we're not going to have him with us. We won't be able to do things like this. Even if we don't have the money right now, we're never going to have the money. So if we don't go now, we're never going to go, on and on. He didn't need any convincing. He sort of stopped me. He was like, okay, sounds like fun. He actually approached the whole thing, believe it or not, as an opportunity to learn Greek, which very weirdly he did. Was bizarre. We went to Greece, and I'm going to tell you, it was everything I had always hoped it would be, and now I'm trying to figure out how to get back. I actually just I'm getting the applications for Zach to apply to the University of Athens, because I figure if he was there, I would have reason to be there more often. He's reminded me he does not speak Greek, and that could be a problem, but I've said 5 years, he has time. I didn't want to come to the end of my life to discover I had not lived. I didn't want to come to the end of my life and regret not seeing the Aegean Sea. Even though some of the literature that I'm bringing you today is trite and overused, I'm actually adding another poem into the afternoon, which also has become cliche, but there might be some reason that some pieces are just visited too often. And this one is from Mary Oliver, and it's called Summer Day, and you can probably recite it with me. I'm not going to read all of it, although really it's worth the read. But here's a truncated version. She writes, "Who made the world? Who made the swan, the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? What do you plan to do? If you could go back, what would you do differently? And as you go forward, what life will you create for yourself? Who would you be in this new life? How would you be bigger, bolder? How will you drive life into a corner? What lives are left for you to live? What worries can you let go of so you can live more fully this one life? Maybe today is a day to take a risk, to do the thing you've always wanted to do, to stop waiting for the right time and instead to grab onto this wild and precious life like the weasel and not let